You are a child of the Most High God, created with a purpose, filled with potential and potential with favor. You are not here by accident. God designed you with intentionality, with gifts and talents that set you apart. When you recognize your worth, when you truly understand who you are in Christ, you stop seeking validation from people who may never fully appreciate you. The world may try to define you by your past, by your mistakes, or by the opinions of others, but God has already called you chosen, valuable, and set apart. Too often people go through life feeling inadequate, as if they are not enough. They allow rejection, disappointment, or past failures to shape their identity. But you are not what happened to you. You are not the opinion of those who overlooked you. Your value is not determined by how people treat you or whether they recognize your worth. It is determined by the one who created you. And when God looks at you, He sees someone special, someone worth loving, someone worth blessing. Sometimes we spend so much time and energy trying to get people to notice us, trying to prove our value, to make someone love us, to earn their respect. But the truth is, you don't need everyone's approval. Some people will never see your worth because they are not meant to be part of your destiny. The sooner you stop seeking validation from the wrong people, the sooner you'll step into the fullness of what God has for you. Think about a diamond. Its value doesn't change based on whether someone recognizes it or not. It could be buried in the ground for thousands of years, unnoticed, untouched, but the moment it's discovered is still just as valuable as the day it was created. That's how you need to see yourself. You don't become valuable when someone appreciates you. You don't become worthy when people acknowledge you. You are already valuable, already chosen, already enough. When you understand your worth, you carry yourself differently. You don't settle for less than what God has for you. You don't tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or people who only keep you around when it's convenient for them. When you know your value, you walk with confidence, not arrogance, but assurance in who you are. You stop wasting time on things and people that drain you. You stop lowering your standards just to fit in. Jesus Himself knew His worth. He didn't beg for acceptance. He didn't chase after people trying to convince them of who He was. When He went to His hometown, they doubted Him. They questioned His authority. They said, "This is the carpenter's son." But Jesus didn't let their disbelief change who He knew Himself to be. He didn't stay there trying to prove Himself. The Bible says He moved on. He walked away because He understood that His value was not determined by the recognition. You have to be willing to do the same. Some people won't see your worth no matter what you do. They may try to minimize you, overlook you, or make you feel like you're not enough. But don't let their limited perception define your identity. If someone doesn't see your value, that's okay. It doesn't mean you're not valuable. It just means they're not the right person to recognize it. When you truly know your worth, you start to walk in favor. You stop chasing and you start attracting. The right people, the right opportunities, the right relationships will come into your life. You won't have to force them. You won't have to beg for attention or approval. What's meant for you will find you when you honor who God created you to be. So today, make a decision to see yourself the way God sees you. Stop questioning your value. Stop letting temporary setbacks shake your confidence. Stop comparing yourself to others and feeling like you're not enough. You have everything you need to fulfill your purpose. God has equipped you, anointed you, and positioned you for greatness. When you walk in the confidence of who you are, when you embrace your worth, doors will open. Opportunities will come. And the right people will recognize what you bring to the table. You don't have to force it, and you don't have to prove it. Just stand firm in the knowledge that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And nothing can take that away. Sometimes we give too much of ourselves to people who don't truly appreciate us. We go out of our way to be there to support them, to prove our loyalty. But instead of being valued, we are taken for granted. The reality is, when you're always available, always the one reaching out, always the one making an effort, people start to assume you'll always be there. They stop seeing your presence as a privilege and start treating it as an expectation. That's why it's so important to create balance in your relationships. If you give too much of yourself without receiving anything in return, you risk being undervalued and overlooked. God never intended for you to live desperate, chasing after people's time and attention. When you're always available, always answering calls immediately, always adjusting your schedule to fit someone else's, you may think you're being kind and generous, but in reality, you might be teaching them to take you for granted. People tend to value what is rare, what is earned, and what is not always accessible. That's why the most expensive items in the world aren't available on every street corner. Their value is tied to their exclusivity. If you give unlimited access to your time, energy, and emotions without requiring anything in return, you send the message that your presence doesn't have to be earned. Think about how God operates. He loves us unconditionally, but He doesn't force Himself into our lives. He waits for us to seek Him, to desire His presence. The Bible says, draw near to God and He will draw near to you. There is a principle in that when something is always right in front of you, you can lose sight of how important it is. But when you have to seek it, when you have to make an effort, you appreciate it more. In the same way, you have to let people miss you. Let them experience what life is like without your constant availability. If you always say yes, if you're always there the moment they call, they might never realize how much you truly add to their life. But when you step back, when you create space, it gives them the chance to reflect on your value. Some people will notice your absence and they'll begin to appreciate you more. Others may not. And that's okay. It simply means they were never meant to be a major part of your life. Jesus understood this principle. He was compassionate. He healed the sick. He ministered to crowds. But he also took time away. He would go to quiet places away from people, away from demands, to spend time with his Father. He wasn't always accessible. And yet that never diminished his influence. It increased it. People sought him out. They traveled long distances just to be near him. Why? Because his presence wasn't something they could take for granted. In your own life, it's okay to take a step back sometimes. It's okay to set boundaries, to not always be the first to text, to not always say yes when someone needs a favor. You are not being selfish, you are protecting your peace. You are showing people that your time and energy are valuable. The right people will respect that. They won't disappear just because you stop chasing them. Instead, they will appreciate you more. Sometimes when you step back, you'll see the true nature of your relationships. If someone only reaches out when they need something, if they only notice you when you're convenient for them, that's not a healthy relationship. But if someone values you, if they genuinely care about you, they won't let distance break the connection. They will make an effort because they recognize your worth. So don't be afraid to be a little less available. Don't be afraid to let people miss you. When you create space, when you set boundaries, you raise your value in the eyes of those around you. And more importantly, you remind yourself that you are worth more than being someone's backup plan. You are worth being pursued, valued, and respected. When you carry yourself with that confidence, the right people will see it. And they will rise to meet your worth. So involved in a relationship or so attached to an outcome that we can't see things clearly. Our emotions cloud our judgment and we ignore signs that are right in front of us. But when we step back, when we allow some space, the truth begins to unfold. Distance gives us the perspective we need to see people and circumstances for what they really are. Have you ever noticed how much clearer things become when you take a step away? Maybe you were in a friendship where you always gave, always showed up, always made the effort. At the time it felt normal because you were so used to it. But the moment you stopped reaching out, the moment you took a step back, you realized something, you were the one carrying the relationship. Without your effort, there was no relationship at all. That distance didn't change the reality of the friendship. It only revealed what was already there. God often uses distance to show us the truth. There are times when He will allow people to walk away, not to hurt us, but to protect us. Sometimes He separates us from certain situations because He knows they are not serving our destiny. But if we're too close, if we're too emotionally involved, we may not recognize it. That's why it's important to embrace the space that distance provides. It's not rejection, it's redirection. Think about how valuable distance is in our spiritual journey. Even Jesus at times withdrew from the crowds. He knew that He needed moments alone to pray, to gain clarity, to realign Himself with God's will. If Jesus needed distance to gain clarity, how much more do we? When we are constantly surrounded by noise, by other people's opinions, by distractions, it becomes difficult to hear God's voice. But when we step back, when we take time to reflect, we can finally see what God has been trying to show us all along. Distance not only reveals the truth about others, but it also reveals the truth about ourselves. Sometimes we are so caught up in trying to make something work, trying to hold on to relationships, opportunities, or situations that are draining us, that we lose sight of who we are. But when we take a step back, we start to recognize our own value. We begin to see how much we were overextending ourselves, how much we were settling, how much we were compromising our peace just to keep something that wasn't meant for us. Have you ever lost something or someone and later realized it was a blessing in disguise? At the time, it felt painful. It felt like a loss. But after some time passed, after you had the space to reflect, you saw that it was actually God's way of clearing the path for something better. That's the power of distance. It takes away the emotional fog and allows us to see clearly. When you allow distance in your relationships, you also see who truly values you. The people who are meant to be in your life will not let distance separate them from you. They will still make an effort. They will still reach out. They will still care. But those who only stayed because you were convenient, those who only remained close because of what you provided, will fade away. And that's okay. Distance is God's way of filtering your life, removing what is not meant for you and leaving behind only what truly matters. So don't be afraid to take a step back. Don't be afraid to give space where it's needed. If something is truly meant for you, it will remain. If someone genuinely values you, they will not disappear. And if they do, it only means that God has something greater ahead. Distance is not the enemy. It is the key to clarity, to growth, and to discovering the life God truly has in store for you. Too often in life, people settle for less than what they deserve. They stay in relationships that drain them, accept jobs that don't fulfill them, and tolerate treatment that doesn't align with their worth. But God never created you to live in mediocrity. He never intended for you to shrink yourself just to fit into someone else's world. When you raise your standards, when you recognize the greatness inside of you, you start to walk in the blessings that God has prepared for you. Raising your standards is not about arrogance or pride. It's about knowing who you are and refusing to accept anything that diminishes your value. When you understand that you are a child of the Most High God, you stop settling for relationships where you are not respected. You stop chasing after people who don't appreciate you. You stop saying yes to things that don't align with your purpose. The way you allow others to treat you is a reflection of how you see yourself. If you keep lowering your standards to accommodate others, you are teaching them that it is okay to give you less than you deserve. Some people settle in life because they are afraid of being alone. They stay in friendships where they are constantly giving but never receiving. They remain in relationships where they are not valued. They tolerate disrespect because they believe it's better than walking away. But you have to understand, when you lower your standards, you delay the blessings that God has in store for you. God cannot bring the right people into your life if you are still holding on to the wrong ones. Jesus never begged anyone to stay in His life. He never chased after people, trying to convince them of His worth. When the rich young ruler walked away because he wasn't ready to follow Him, Jesus didn't run after him and say, wait, let me lower my standards to make it easier for you. No, He let him go. Because Jesus understood that not everyone is meant to walk with you to your destiny. When you raise your standards, some people will walk away, and that's okay. You don't need everyone's approval. You need God's approval. You may have people in your life who try to make you feel guilty for having high standards. They may say you are too picky, too difficult, too demanding. But don't let their opinions make you lower your expectations. You are not asking for too much. You are just asking for the right things. You deserve relationships that are built on mutual respect. You deserve to be surrounded by people who uplift you, not tear you down. You deserve to be in environments that encourage your growth, not stifle it. Think about the most valuable things in life: diamonds, gold, luxury items. They are not available to just anyone. They are rare, they are precious, and because of that, they are pursued. The same principle applies to you. When you hold yourself to a higher standard, you become more valuable in the eyes of the right people. The ones who truly respect you, the ones who are meant to be in your life, will rise to meet your standards. They will make the effort because they recognize your worth. You have to set boundaries and stand firm in them. People will only treat you the way you allow them to. If you tolerate disrespect, it will continue. If you settle for less, you will keep receiving less. But the moment you raise your standards, the moment you decide that you are worth more, everything in your life will begin to shift. God has incredible blessings in store for you, but you have to make room for them. You have to be willing to walk away from what doesn't serve you so that He can bring you something better. When you raise your standards, you don't just change the way people treat you, you change the way you see yourself. You start to move differently, think differently, and expect more. And when you expect more, God will meet you at the level of your faith. So don't be afraid to demand more from life. Don't be afraid to let go of what is beneath you. When you raise your standards, you step into the life that God has truly designed for you, one filled with love, respect, success, and divine favor. Your peace is one of the most valuable things you have. It's the place where your joy, your clarity, and your connection with God come from. But too often, people allow their peace to be stolen. They let stress, drama, and negativity invade their minds and hearts. They entertain toxic relationships, dwell on things they cannot change, allow the opinions of others to disturb their spirit. If you don't protect your peace, life will constantly feel overwhelming, and you'll never experience the fullness of what God has for you. Protecting your peace means being intentional about what you allow into your life. You can't control everything that happens, but you can control what you give your attention to. There will always be people who try to pull you into drama, who drain your energy, who leave you feeling exhausted. But just because they invite you into their chaos doesn't mean you have to accept the invitation. You have the right to walk away from conversations that don't serve you. You have the right to set boundaries and say no to things that disturb your spirit. Jesus Himself understood the importance of peace. He didn't let the pressures of the world consume Him. Even when people criticized Him, doubted Him, and tried to trap Him with their words, He remained calm. He knew His mission. He knew who He was, and He refused to be pulled into distractions. There were times when He withdrew from the crowds, when He stepped away from people to be alone and pray. He wasn't avoiding responsibility. He was protecting his peace so he could fulfill his purpose. In the same way, you have to be intentional about guarding your peace. You can't let every little thing upset you. You can't allow negativity to take root in your mind. When someone offends you, you have a choice: let it steal your joy or rise above it. When things don't go as planned, you can either stress about it or trust that God is in control. Peace isn't found in having a perfect life. It's found in knowing that no matter what happens, you are secure in God's hands. Some people will try to guilt you into carrying their burdens. They will expect you to fix their problems, to always be available, to take on more than you can handle. But you are not called to be the solution for everyone. You can love people, pray for them, and encourage them, but you cannot sacrifice your peace to please them. If you constantly pour into others while neglecting yourself, you will eventually be drained, frustrated, and resentful. That's why you have to set boundaries. Protecting your peace means surrounding yourself with the right people. Not everyone deserves access to your heart and mind. Some relationships bring peace and others bring stress. Some people speak life into you and others drain the life out of you. Pay attention to how you feel after being around certain people. Do they leave you feeling uplifted, or do they leave you feeling exhausted? You don't have to allow toxic people to have a place in your life just because of history or obligation. If someone is constantly bringing negativity, it's okay to love them from a distance. Your peace is too valuable to be sacrificed for things that don't matter. Don't let social media, comparison, or the pressures of the world disturb your mind. Don't waste time arguing, proving yourself, or seeking approval from people who never see your worth. Instead, focus on what builds you up. Spend time in prayer, meditate on God's promises, and fill your life with things that bring you joy. At the end of the day, peace is a choice. It's not about what's happening around you, but what's happening inside you. Choose to protect it, to guard it, and to prioritize it. When you do, you'll walk in the freedom, joy, and confidence that God intended for you. There are times in life when we try to take control, force things to happen, and make everything work on our own. We work tirelessly trying to fix situations, change people, and push doors open that were never meant for us. But the more we strive, the more exhausted we become. The truth is, we were never meant to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. That's why God tells us to be still and trust Him. When we let go and allow God to do the work, we step into the peace, favor, and blessings that He has already prepared for us. Letting God do the work doesn't mean we sit back and do nothing. It means we do our part, but we don't try to control what is beyond us. It means we plant the seeds, but we trust God to bring the harvest. It means we take steps of faith, but we surrender the outcome to Him. Some people spend their whole lives stressed out, worried about things that were never meant to fix. They try to change people who don't want to change, force relationships that aren't meant to be, or make things happen before their time. But when you truly trust God, you stop striving and start resting in His plan. God knows what He's doing. He sees the big picture. He knows the right people, the right opportunities, and the right timing. When we try to do things in our own strength, we often end up frustrated and disappointed. But when we let God work, things fall into place in ways we never imagined. Sometimes the reason things aren't working out is that God is protecting us from something we can't see. That closed door, that delay, that unexpected change, it may be God's way of redirecting you to something better. Think about the story of Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt. They came to the Red Sea and it looked like there was no way forward. The enemy was behind them and the sea was in front of them. They started panic, wondering how they would survive. But Moses told them, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. God didn't bring them that far just to leave them. And sure enough, He parted the sea, making a way where there was no way. In your own life, there may be things that seem impossible. Maybe you don't see a way forward. Maybe you've tried everything and nothing is changing. But God is saying, be still. Let Maine do the work. He already has the solution. He already has the breakthrough lined up. Your job is not to figure out how it's to trust that He will make a way. Sometimes God allows challenges to come not to break us, but to build our faith. He wants us to learn to rely on Him instead of trying to handle everything on our own. If He did everything instantly, we wouldn't develop patience, trust, or endurance. But when we go through seasons of waiting, when we face obstacles that only He can remove, our faith grows stronger. We start to see that He is truly in control. There are also times when we pray and don't see immediate results. We wonder if God even hears us. But just because we don't see anything happening doesn't mean God isn't working. Some miracles take time. Some blessings require preparation. If you rush ahead of God, you might settle for something less than what He has for you. That's why it's so important to be patient and trust His timing. Letting God do the work also means releasing your worries and fears. So many people live in anxiety because they're constantly trying to figure everything out. But Philippians 4:6 tells us, do not be anxious about anything, But in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. When you truly give something to God, you don't have to stress about it anymore. You can move forward in peace, knowing that He's got it under control. So today, whatever you're struggling with, whatever is weighing on your heart, let it go. Let God do the work. He knows what's best for you. He knows how to turn things around. He knows how to open the right doors and bring the right opportunities. Your job is to trust Him, walk in faith, and let Him lead the way. When you do, you'll find that life is not only easier, but filled with more peace, joy, and divine blessings than you ever imagined. In life, it's easy to get distracted by what everyone else is doing. We compare ourselves to others, worry about their opinions, and try to keep up with expectations that were never meant for us. But if you want to reach your full potential, you have to shift your focus. Stop worrying about what others are doing and start focusing on your own growth. God has placed unique gifts, dreams, and purpose inside of you, and your job is to develop them, to grow into the person He created you to be. Growth doesn't happen by accident. It takes intentional effort. Just like a seed needs water, sunlight, and time to grow into a strong tree, you need to nurture your own personal and spiritual growth. That means feeding your mind with the right things, surrounding yourself with the right people, and being willing to step out of your comfort zone. If you stay in the same place, doing the same things, thinking the same way, you'll never reach the next level of your destiny. God wants to take you higher, but you have to be willing to grow. One of the biggest obstacles to growth is distraction. It's easy to get caught up in drama, negativity, and things that have nothing to do with your purpose. You might be spending too much time worrying about what others think, comparing your progress to someone else's, or trying to please people who will never truly support you. But when you focus on your growth, you learn to tune out the noise. You realize that your journey is unique and that what God has for you will come in His perfect timing. Think about an athlete training for a race. They don't stop in the middle of training to look around and see what everyone else is doing. They stay focused, disciplined, and committed to their growth. They push through discomfort because they know that growth comes with challenges. In the same way, you have to be willing to go through seasons of stretching, learning, and even failing. Growth is not always easy, but it is always worth it. Another key part of focusing on your growth is letting go of what no longer serves you. Sometimes we hold on to relationships, habits, or mindsets that are keeping us stuck. We resist change because it feels uncomfortable, but growth requires letting go. If you want to become the person God created you to be, you have to be willing to release anything that is holding you back. That means walking away from toxic people, breaking free from negative thinking, and making decisions that align with your future, not your past. Personal growth also requires surrounding yourself with the right influences. Who you spend time with affects your mindset, your habits, and your future. If you're always around people who complain, who make excuses, who settle for less, it will be hard for you to grow beyond that. But when you surround yourself with people who inspire you, who push you to be better, and who encourage your dreams, your growth accelerates. God places people in our lives to help us grow, but we have to be intentional about choosing the right connections. Spiritual growth is just as important as personal growth. Spending time with God, praying, reading His Word, and seeking His guidance will strengthen you from the inside out. When you are connected to Him, you gain wisdom, peace, and clarity about your purpose. You stop seeking validation from the world because you know that your identity comes from God. At the end of the day, your focus determines your future. If you keep looking at distractions, worrying about what others are doing, or staying in the same place, you'll miss out on the incredible things God has planned for you. But if you commit to your growth, if you stay focused on becoming better, stronger, and wiser, you will step into a life of purpose, fulfillment, and divine blessings. So don't settle. Keep growing, keep learning, and trust that God is taking you exactly where you need to be. There are moments in life when you feel overlooked, underappreciated, or stuck in the same place for too long. You work hard, you stay faithful, but it seems like nothing is changing. It's easy to get discouraged and wonder if your time will ever come. But the good news is, you don't have to promote yourself, force doors open, or strive to be seen. When you stay faithful, when you keep honoring God, He will elevate you in His perfect timing. The opportunities, the breakthroughs, the success you've been praying for, God is already arranging it. You don't have to manipulate circumstances or chase after people's approval. When it's your time, nothing can stop what God has planned for you. God's elevation doesn't come through human effort alone, it comes through His favor. There are some places that hard work alone won't take you, some positions that degrees and experience won't qualify you for. But when God's hand is on your life, He will take you where no one else thought you could go. He will open doors that no one can shut. He will bring the right people into your life, align the right opportunities, and position you for greatness in ways that don't even make sense. Think about David. He was just a shepherd boy out in the fields, forgotten by his own family. When the prophet Samuel came to anoint the next king, David's father didn't even call him into house. He brought out all his other sons thinking one of them would be chosen. But God said, I don't look at outward appearance, I look at the heart. Even though David was overlooked by people, he was chosen by God. And when it was his time, no one could stop the elevation that was coming. That's how God works. People may overlook you. They may not recognize your talent. They may not see your value, but God sees you. He sees the effort you're putting in. He sees the sacrifices you're making. He sees your heart, your integrity, your faithfulness. And when the time is right, He will lift you up. You don't have to fight for recognition. You don't have to beg for opportunities. Just keep being excellent where you are, and God will take care of the rest. Sometimes elevation requires patience. You may feel like you're ready for the next level, but God is still preparing you. If He promoted you too soon, you wouldn't be able to handle it. Every season of waiting is a season of preparation. God is developing your character, strengthening your faith, and positioning you for greater things. Don't despise the process. Don't rush ahead of God's timing. What He has for you is worth the wait. Joseph had to go through years of trials before he reached his destiny. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, thrown into prison for a crime he didn't commit. It seemed like everything was going wrong, but even in those difficult moments, God was preparing him. And when the time was right, Joseph went from the prison to the palace in a single day. That's how quickly God can elevate you. One moment it looks like you're stuck, and the next moment you're walking in blessings beyond your imagination. God's elevation is not just about personal success, it's about fulfilling His purpose for your life. When He lifts you up, it's not just for you so you can be a blessing to others. When He promotes you, He wants you to use your influence for good. When He increases your resources, He wants you to help those in need. The higher He takes you, the greater your responsibility. So don't be discouraged if you're in a season of waiting. Your time is coming. Stay faithful, keep doing your best, and trust that God's plan is bigger than anything you could arrange for yourself. When He elevates you, it will be undeniable, unstoppable, and beyond anything you could have achieved on your own. Stay ready because your promotion is on the way.